All right, I just wanted to talk about some of these recent sporting games and how they go with the 91 code and also the 56 code that I've been talking about a ton recently. 91 just seems to be standing out a lot. Also, 56 had a lot to do with the Paris attacks. But anyway, Michigan State played Ohio State. I had a good feeling that Michigan State was actually going to win it. I think they might actually lose to Penn State next week, but I'm not quite for sure. I think they're going to lose, though, and Michigan's going to beat Ohio State, and then Michigan will move on to beat Iowa in the Big Ten championship because they got to celebrate the Wolf. I mean, Michigan State did lose to Nebraska as well, so it is very possible that they would lose to Penn State. But anyway, moral of the story here, this game, I've talked about how if a team adds up to 91 or something adds up to 91, it's like an elimination death type number. Michigan State was 9-1 going into this game, but if it doesn't, they don't add up to 91. But Ohio State, they are the Buckeyes, and Buckeyes adds up to 91. So go figure that they would lose. Also interesting to point out, so Michigan State's starting quarterback wasn't playing, and this guy was the starting quarterback, Tyler O'Connor. But I mean, look at their passing yards, 91 yards. I mean, what are the odds of that? They get 91 yards. They even won on a 41-yard field goal, which interesting because I've talked about 4-1 is the 91st day of the year. 41 is about the skull and bones and whatnot. 41 and 91 go together. I've talked about this multiple times. They win the game. The score was tied 14-14, the mirrors of 41. Even if you add up the word 14, it adds up to 41. And then they win with a 41-yard field goal. I do question my thinking, though, on a few things. I mean, Michigan State, they're also in the Wolverine state. So maybe when they're celebrating the Wolf, they're literally just going to do it by the state. And Michigan State is actually going to beat Penn State, whatever, and Michigan will still have a good season, but they won't be the best or whatever, So maybe that's it. This win or this loss, I guess, it made them both 10-1, which is interesting. I've talked about Philadelphia adding up to 101, but also 10-1 October 1st. There are 91 days left until the end of the year. But I said usually if they add up to 91, they lose. So it really has nothing to do with this. But just interesting to point out, I guess. Also, it was number 9 versus number 3. And if Michigan loses to Ohio State next week, they'll be 9-3. I also talked about the Iowa Hawkeyes, a lot of coding to the Iowa Hawkeyes. They had Tyler Sash. He doesn't play. He never played for him this year, but he died this year. He was a former player. But his name, with the S exception, adds up to 55. Just like, it doesn't show it on here, but if you do S is 10 instead of 1, whatever. But Iowa Hawkeyes adds up to 55 as well. But the interesting thing is that Tyler Sash died on 9/8, and Lupercalia, talked about how it's all coded to Lupercalia. That's why they're celebrating the Wolf. Lupercalia adds up to 98. So, this could have something to do with them celebrating the Wolf through the Hawkeyes because he died on the day that coincides with Lupercalia. Also, though, the Iowa Hawkeyes, the last time that they were ranked number 1 was the same year that the Kansas City Royals won the World Series. So, very interesting. It just makes me wonder how they're actually doing it, but it all ties back into Lupercalia one way or the other. And the only thing that holds me back on Iowa is that the fact that they add up to 55 and Tyler Sash adds up to 55. And it just seems like the number 55 has just been something bad, just like the number 91. So if things add up to 91 and 55 in recent events, it seems like they lose every time. Also thought it was kind of weird that Ohio State had 46 passing yards and Michigan State had 91. 91 and 46 Chicago Cubs adds up to that. There's still something missing about the curse of the Billy Goat that the Chicago Cubs were supposed to break this year, I feel like. It all tied into the number 106 and whatnot. It just seems really weird. And I've noticed these two numbers together a lot of times. I'm not even going to put up any examples other than Chicago Cubs. But just interesting that they would both have these two numbers as passing yards. Anyway, I'm going to move on to this game here. Nothing that special about it that I didn't watch it. I don't know that much. But Northern Iowa beats North Carolina 71-67. And it's big because North Carolina was ranked number 1. But the best player on UNI was Wes Washburn, and he scored 21 points. And of course, his name adds up to exactly the same thing as Skull and Bones, 149 and 41. Also, this might be a stretch because they're called University of Northern Iowa, but if you take out the of, just Northern Iowa University, it adds up to 322, the number of the Skull and Bones. I mean, pretty crazy. Also, what was interesting about this loss was one of North Carolina's players who wasn't playing is Marcus Page, and he's actually from Iowa, so they made it kind of a big deal or whatever. It says on here his hometown is Marion, Iowa, but he even has a Wikipedia page, which is interesting because a lot of college players don't. But he was born on September 11th. Oh, what a day to be born. But it says he was born in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. That's where UNI is even from. Interesting, he was also Iowa Mr. Basketball, which adds up to 56. His name adds up to 50, which I haven't mentioned that much, but 1950 was 65 years ago. So that means 50 and 65 are mirrored years. And then 56 and 65 are mirrors of each other, which I know that might sound confusing, but I have seen 50 a whole lot as well. I just haven't mentioned it. Anyway, it's also like Paris, France, 56, ISIS, 56. Ronda Rousey just lost, 56. Charlie Sheen just said that he had HIV, 56. He's on 2.5 Men, 56. A ton of other things I've had in previous videos. 56 has been coded like crazy. Osama bin Laden, Saddam Hussein, and Rockefeller all add up to 56 as well. Interesting too, in my comments, I was also told that the Sandy Hook sign says 1956, and it just seems like 56 has been coded into major events. Sandy Hook, 1956. Even this, the Roanoke shooting, the 41-year-old Vester Lee Flanagan. But remember, he posted the video online, the fake video. But that video that he posted was 56 seconds long. And I can't help but think Allison Parker, it just makes me think of Trey Parker. Trey Parker adds up to 56. One of the creators of South Park and Team America. He talked about the whole connection between Everyone Has AIDS, the song, and in the movie Team America, they destroy Paris in the very beginning because of the terrorist attacks and whatnot. But interesting, my last video I just talked about Chile and what it had to do with earthquakes. If you go to Chile and you look at the calling code is even plus 56. Lots to do with earthquakes and whatnot in Chile, but you also had the Chilean miner accident that happened in that movie, The 33, based on it, just came out the same day as the Paris attacks. So just kind of interesting to have the calling code of plus 56. Interesting too, this guy was the second president to be assassinated, James Garfield. His name adds up to 56, but he also died, or he was born on November 19th and died on September 19th. And literally, November 19th adds up to 91, and also September 19th adds up to 91. September 19th is even literally 919, kind of like the mirrors of 91 and 19. And on the Roman calendar, November used to be the 9th month. So November 19th would even be 919. That's pretty interesting. I wonder I haven't figured it all out, but there's some very interesting stuff. He died at the age of 49 even. But anyway, moral of the story, all the 4 assassinated presidents all have ties to Skull and Bones. So this guy, the 91 I talked about, 91, even George Bush, 41, Bush Sr., he turned 91 years old this year. Jimmy Carter turned 91 this year. George Bush, but all the Bushes were Skull and Bones members. But Jimmy Carter even turned 91. With 91 days to go, the same day as the Roseburg, Oregon shooting. But, so, this guy, you've seen his ties to the 91, which 4-1 is the 91st day, so it ties back into Skull and Bones that adds up to 41. But also, Abraham Lincoln died on April 15th, which adds up to 149, just like Skull and Bones. By the way, Abraham Lincoln died at the age of 56 in the year 65 in Washington, D.C. That adds up to 56. He also died in April, the only month that adds up to 56. But anyway, the third president to be assassinated was William McKinley. William McKinley died on September 14th, 1901. Literally, in Europe, they'd write the date as 14-9, kind of like 149. Also, 1901, if you take out the 0, it's 191. But September 14th even adds up to 91. Now, I haven't figured it out. The last president to die in office then was JFK. Haven't figured out the total 91 connection, but interesting, he was born on the 149th day of the year, just like Skull and Bones, and he died at the age of 46. Like I said, 46 and 91 have been connected numbers. Chicago Cubs adds up to 46 and 91. And who knows, could just be a coincidence, but if you add up President JFK and Gematria, it adds up to 56. And this really has nothing to do with it, but I was just thinking, he became president in 1961. If you take 1961 and you flip it, or whatever, and mirror it, 1961 is literally, if you flip it upside down, it's still 1961. So just kind of interesting. I talked about all the 34 stuff with Abraham Lincoln, and if you flip over 1981, which is 34 years ago, 1981 is 1861. So that's why I found it interesting. Just thought I'd point it out really quick. Also, in regards to Chicago, talking about Chicago Cubs 91 and 46 and whatnot. But the first time that the United States president visited a pope was in the year 1919. That was also a big year in Chicago. There was a race riot. That was the year of the Black Sox scandal. There was the first major aviation crash in the United States. And then we had that blimp that crashed or whatever this year. So just interesting. And then 1919 is literally the mirror of 91. JFK even met the Pope on 7/2 of 1963. Also find it interesting, Jimmy Carter, in his time, was the first president to visit the White House, or the first Pope to visit the White House. And it was on October 6, 1979. We talked about this number over and over, the 106. It's the same as 923 on the Julian calendar. Jimmy Carter's 91 years old this year, became 91 with 91 days left. But Pope Francis came on September 22nd. And if you take that span of days, it's 6 years, 11 months, 16 days. Just interesting. 6111, and then backwards 6111. And I mean 111 times 6, 666. So anyway, I'm going to make a part 2 with some more stuff, but I'm going to go off a little bit. So JFK is known for like Fidel Castro stuff, right? And I remembered the Ariel Castro kidnappings. Interesting that these girls escaped on May 6, which is 56 or 5/6, even on 41 degrees north. And look at their birthdays here. 4/1 of 1981, 4/22/86. Also, February 13th, 1990. Lupercalia. I mean, whatever. Just thought that was interesting. The one girl was even the Dark Knight in the picture, but anyway, see you in part 2.